Good evening, class, and welcome to Mr. Desarme's Social Studies. Today we are going to be talking about the theme of German unification. Now, to understand the story of German unification, it makes sense for us to talk about the concept of nationalism. Now, nationalism is an idea that really started to arise in Europe with the French Revolution of the late 1700s and became a pretty powerful force going forward. Now, what is nationalism? Simply put, nationalism is a deep devotion to one's country. And this can be either good or bad, right? In our culture, in the American culture, we get very nationalistic around the 4th of July because that's our Independence Day. We wear our red, white, and blue, and we celebrate being American, right? We do the same thing when events like the Olympics or the World Cup come around because it makes us feel good to celebrate our heritage, our culture, and our customs. And that's a good thing. But nationalism can also be used in a negative way to promote an idea of superiority over other groups and other people. Now, there's 5 basic factors to nationalism. The first is a common geographic location, right? For people to think of themselves as one people, it makes sense for them to be in one general location, to be pretty close to one another. Secondly, it makes sense for them to have a common language, one that they can use to communicate with each other. It's hard to identify with someone that you cannot talk to. Third, it's important to have a common history, meaning a common set of experiences, a common story that is seen throughout my community and your community. Fourth, it helps to have common culture and traditions, and a lot of times this includes religion. It's unfortunate that religions often fight against each other, but historically, for people to think of themselves as one group of people, a lot of times that included a common set of beliefs, a common set of traditions, and that includes religion a lot of the time. And then last but not least, a common enemy, someone who we can join together to fight against because we both don't like. Now, you don't always need all of these factors for nationalism, but when you have all 5 present, especially that last one of a common enemy, it can be a very, very uniting force for a group of people. Now, the story of German unification takes place in the 1860s and 1870s. Prior to that, Germany was made up of about 39 small kingdoms. Right? The map of Germany, what is Germany today, would have looked something like this. And this is the same time when this idea of realism is becoming popular in mainstream society. Now, realism is in contrast to idealism, which came out of the French Revolution. This obsession with what society could be. Realism was more concerned with the attitude of accepting the situation as it is and dealing with it accordingly. So you have to bring about your own reality under the concept of realism. And there was no one who embodied this more than a man by the name of Otto von Bismarck. He was a master of what we call realpolitik, which is a political principle that it's less important to have peace than success, right? As whatever you have to do to achieve your objective is okay as long as you achieve it. This is similar to Machiavellian beliefs that we've talked about in the past. Now, in the year 1861, Otto von Bismarck becomes appointed as chief master under Kaiser Wilhelm, or King William, of this German state here known as Prussia. And he used his intellect, he was a very smart man, used his intellect to manipulate the Kaiser into letting him do what he wanted, right? Even though the Kaiser had the official power, it was pretty clear to anyone who was observing the scene that Bismarck was the one who was really in control. And in 1864, he starts a series of wars that end up uniting Germany under the rule of Prussia. He starts wars with Denmark, Austria, and France. Now, how does he go about doing this? Well, Denmark, which is located here in the north, was controlling 2 German provinces at the time. And Bismarck's idea was, Well, these people are German. They speak German. They are culturally German. They should not be under the control of a Danish power. And so he goes to neighboring Austria, which is also a country filled with many German people. And he says, let's go in together against the country of Denmark to free the German people that are under Danish control. And he does. And, they go in together and it works out. They free those two provinces. And then they split control of them. Prussia takes control of one, and Austria takes control of the other. And then Bismarck starts a conflict between the two provinces in order to provoke a war with Austria. He knew that Austria, as the other powerful German state, would force all the remaining kingdoms of Germany to pick a side. Are they going to be allies with Prussia, or are they going to be allies with Austria? And he was right in his assumption. And the other small kingdoms of Germany, most of them decide to ally with Prussia. And so Prussia and Austria go to war, and the Prussians win very, very quickly. Right? They have a society that was based on military success, and they obliterate the Austrians quickly. And Bismarck was very careful not to offend the Austrians in the terms of his peace treaty, because he knew that they would be a useful ally to him again in the future. And so even though they beat them down pretty badly and pretty quickly, he wanted to maintain a good relationship with them. In these first two wars, the war against Denmark and against Austria, were preparing Bismarck and the Prussian army for the larger test that they would face against France. Now, France at this point in time was one of the most powerful countries in Europe. And Bismarck decided that he wanted to stir some political tensions between France and Prussia. Now, how did he do this? Well, he intercepted and rewrote a telegram that was from Kaiser Wilhelm to King King Napoleon III of France. And essentially what he did was he made it seem as though a Prussian aristocrat was insulting the French king. And basically he tricked France into declaring war on Germany, right? He got them to swing first, as the expression goes. And the two countries went to war. And Prussia pretty quickly won the war and took the two territories here known as Alsace and Lorraine. And not only did they do that, but they marched deep into France, into the city of Paris, and occupied the Palace of Versailles. And they crowned their new Kaiser Wilhelm of a united Germany, in the Palace of Versailles, in the most beautiful room in the Palace of Versailles, which is known as the Hall of Mirrors. Now, this was an incredible insult to the French people. Right? To put it in perspective, it would be sort of like if Mexico were to invade the United States, win a war quickly, and then march their army to Washington, D.C., and crown their new leader in the White House, in the Oval Office. Right? This would upset a lot of American people. And that's exactly what the Germans did to the French. And this is going to be a source of a lot of hatred between the nations of France and Germany that will last for quite a while and resurface during World War I. Bismarck is famous for saying that the questions of the day would be answered not by speeches and lectures, but by blood and iron, which represented his ideas in realpolitik and in doing whatever it meant to achieve your objective. Now, what would I like you to do? First, I'd like you to go to Google Classroom. Secondly, I'd like you to click on assignments, find the assignment called Bismarck and German Unification, answer all the questions that you find there, and then come to class tomorrow ready to defend your one-word description of Otto von Bismarck.